When faced with a difficult situation, it is comforting to know your options. If you've been sued by one of the junk debt buyers like Midland Funding, CACH LLC, or Portfolio Recovery, you're likely losing a lot of sleep over what your options are and what, if anything, you can do about it. In this video, I want to go over your 3 options when it comes to dealing with a Midland Funding lawsuit or any of the junk debt buyers. The first thing you can do is to fight back. When a debt buyer like Midland Funding files a lawsuit against people, they often try to make you feel like it's up to you to prove that you don't owe them money. Nothing could be further from the truth. Midland Funding, as the plaintiff in the lawsuit, carries the burden of proof on 3 things. First, that you had an account with an original creditor. 2, that there's a specific amount of money that's owed. And 3, that Midland Funding is the actual owner of the account that they're suing on. If Midland Funding can't prove any of these 3 steps, then they don't get a judgment and you win. If they can prove these elements, then they will likely win and you will end up with a judgment. But the burden is upon Midland Funding to prove the elements of their case. You don't have to disprove anything. But that doesn't mean that you can sit back and just hope that they can't prove their case. If you're going to contest the lawsuit, you will need to be an active participant in the process. This will require you to draft and file the appropriate paperwork and to gain a working understanding of the rules of civil procedure and the rules of evidence. It's important to understand that if you're representing yourself in court, that the judge is usually required to hold you to the same standard as an attorney when it comes to knowing and applying the rules that are applicable to that court. This means that if you blow a deadline or mess up a document, you won't be able to come into court and say, "Judge, I wasn't aware of that rule." I tell you this not in an effort to scare you into hiring a lawyer, but I want people who are representing themselves in court to fully understand what they are taking on when they elect to represent themselves in court. That being said, many times debt buyers like Midland Funding don't have sufficient evidence to prove their case, or they'll simply drop the ball and you'll be able to prevail. If you win at court, the case is over and the debt is done. They'll never be able to come after you on that debt again. The second thing you can do is settle the debt for an amount less than what they're seeking. Settling a debt merely means that you have negotiated a deal with Midland Funding where you're agreeing to pay them an amount less than what they're seeking. The upside to settling your case is that you have some control over the outcome. You don't have to settle, and so if an agreement's reached, it's because you negotiated something that works for you. The downside, obviously, is you have to pay money. The key to settling the debt is timing. There are certain stages of the debt collection process that will provide you with great opportunities to get a very low settlement. The law firm that's working for the debt collector, they want to spend as little effort as possible and collect as much money as possible. That being said, many times the best settlements can be reached after you file an answer in your lawsuit and the case is nearing trial, particularly if the debt buyer doesn't have good evidence of the account. My suggestion for reaching a good settlement is to first come up with what I call a settlement budget. Figure out what you can realistically pay, either on a monthly basis or in the form of a payment, preferably that you can pay in a lump sum in the next 30 days. You need to be brutally honest with yourself here. You don't want to commit to something that you can't do, as that's just going to make a bad situation worse. Ask yourself, how much money do you have saved? Do you have a tax refund coming? Do you have family that can help you out? Answer these types of questions to put together how much you can actually relay to them. Once you put together this plan, about as far as the amount that you want to initially offer them, you can go back and relay that to the debt buyer. If possible, do this in writing. Email is fine. And put a deadline of when you want to hear back. Don't leave this open-ended. It may take a little back and forth, but you should be able to come up with a deal. Now, what if Midland Funding is not being reasonable? Then just go back to step number 1 and fight them. The third option is to file for bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is your debt-fighting trump card that you need to keep in your back pocket at all times through the process of dealing with your debts. I understand that you don't want to file for bankruptcy, but if push comes to shove and you lose your case in court and can't reach a settlement, you'll likely be facing a wage garnishment, and bankruptcy can stop all of this. Bankruptcy may be the best option, especially if you're dealing with a lot of other debt problems. I often tell clients that the lawsuit they're fighting is often winnable, but what does it matter if we win this and then it's replaced by 2 more lawsuits? Sometimes you have to invoke that nuclear option and just obliterate the debt through bankruptcy. Now, I know there are 3 options for dealing with your Midland Funding lawsuit, but far too often people choose option number 4, which is they do nothing at all. There are very limited scenarios where this makes sense. Maybe if your only source of income is Social Security and you have no assets to take, this might be an option. But understand, if you do nothing to deal with your Midland Funding lawsuit, you will end up with a default judgment against you, and Midland Funding will try to collect it through wage garnishment or bank levy. So even if your assets are protected or you don't have wages to garnish, you're still in a spot where you're having to go into court to assert that all of your assets are protected. You're still having to deal with the debt and deal with the debt collector. Don't choose this option. Face the problem, deal with it, and make it go away for once and for all. Thanks for watching.